And like, the playgrounds around here were life-saving during the pandemic.
Yes, we'll get started here. Everybody, welcome to the City of Lacey's Human Services Commission. And we have a special meeting today, Thursday, June 26th, 5:30. We'll go ahead and start the meeting. So first thing I want to do, order of business, is our roll call. Just please announce yourself as present if you're here. We do have a couple one excused absence tonight, and potentially some members will be joining us via the online forum. So first, I have myself, Brandon Stevens, the chair is present, and our vice chair, Angelina Goldwell,
Present.
Nancy Dela,
Here?
and we have Tiffany Walker. Has she made it online yet?
I do not see her.
Okay. Dahlia is excused tonight. Yvette Temple
Present.
and Lester Dixon.
Present.
And El Haj Torre, did he happen to make it, our youth council representative?
Yeah, he said he would be online, but I don't see him yet.
Okay,
But we
so
do have a-
We do have quorum right now, so we'll go ahead and move to item number 3. That's our land acknowledgement. We, the city of Lacey, are on ancestral land of the tribal people of the Treaty of Medicine Creek, including the Nisqually Indian Tribe and Squaxin Island Tribe. We acknowledge and remember those tribal people not recognized today, who were their descendants, who are still here. We recognize and respect the tribal people of the Treaty of Medicine Creek as the traditional stewards of this land since time immemorial, and their role today in taking care of these lands in perpetuity. We recognize and have the responsibility to call to attention to the histories of dispossession, forced removal, and abridged treaty rights that allowed our nation, state, and city to develop as they have today. We recommend that the community members read the Medicine Creek Treaty of 1854.
It's a bummer. It's worth reading.
Yeah, this is a very, we will move on to item number 4, and we have the recommended motion to approve the agenda as published here tonight. Do I have a motion to approve that?
I approve.
Second.
I have a second. All those in favor?
I,
All right, great. So we do have an approval of our agenda tonight. And number 5, we have a public comment section, but I do not see anybody signed up tonight. So we will go ahead and move on to our business items as published in our agenda. And first is a welcome to our newest commissioners who were here last week, but we didn't get a formal introduction. So I'll pass that over to Michelle Chavez.
Thank you, Chair. I would love to welcome our 2 new commissioners, Yvette Temple and Lester Dixon, and have them give a little introduction. And then if we could go around and kind of give a brief introduction of ourselves, because we jumped right in the last meeting with 20 presentations
Straight
and
to the fire.
didn't have a chance to get to know each other. So love the fire. Lester, do you want to go first and give your?
No, gentlemen.
All right.
Thank you, Lester. So my name is Yvette Temple. I've been a resident of Thurston County. It'll be 16 years this July. I bought my house in Lacey a year ago in May, and I became an official resident. And the first thing I did was call up City Hall to see are there some boards or advisory committees I could join. And luckily, for me, I was appointed to the Parks Rec. And it was such a long name, but you know, the parks.
You know what you're talking about.
You know what that is? Yeah, and I chaired that committee, and I'm very, very pleased and excited to see what I kind of feel is almost my baby. I know it's not, but the MPD to be on the ballot. And I, after that was like, okay, what else can I do? I was asked if I would consider joining this group, and I said, that's an honor. I'm happy to. I, for 16 years, have served on many, many nonprofit boards in town. Currently I'm on Homes First. That's why I had to excuse myself out, and I will also recuse myself from anything around Homes First. I'm their past president. I've been on the board for 5.5 years. My day job is I work as a commercial banker at Bank of the Pacific. We're a very small community bank started by business owners in Aberdeen. I own a mobile bartending and event business called Bougie Boozy Bartenders. And I'm running for Lacey City Council, position 6.
Oh, wow, okay.
That's it.
Yeah.
Thanks.
What a resume.
I'm old.
Okay, and I'm Lester Dixon, and I spell it Dickson, not Dixon. For those who during my era knew Richard Nixon said it was too close to Nixon, so my family changed it to Dixon. No, actually, I have been a resident of the city of Lacey for approximately 30 years now. Arrived here in 1984 by way of Fort Lewis, Washington. I was in the Army sergeant in the medical field. After getting out, decided to stay right here in this area. I'm a Midwesterner. Love this area.
You sound like you're a Midwesterner.
And that I am. My wife passed away in 2002. I moved to Tacoma to kind of get away from things because we were both very active. I was on the Timberland Regional Library Board for the city of Lacey. This one right over here. For about 7 years, I was president for a little while. My wife was on the Human Rights Commission for the city of Lacey. So we were very active around here. And after she passed away, it was kind of hard to kind of continue. Stayed in Tacoma area for about 10 years. When someone offered me a home, I had a duplex up there that I was renting and bottom half and selling. And so I saw the house back here in Lacey, and I said, yes, I'd love to move back. Came back and got active again, worked with Shannon over here with my lodge, Frederick Harris Lodge, with the Juneteenth for about 3 years there. And we did some wonderful things working together. And so here I am, had an invitation to apply for this commission. And I have the time, I'm retired from DS Department of Social Health Services as a human resource manager, where I was a manager for 27 years. You imagine the different personnels I've had to deal with.
Yeah, yes, we know.
And I'm from Tacoma, so I understand moving back to Lacey.
Ah,
That's an impressive resume yourself, Lester.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'll go ahead and give a brief introduction of myself and then we'll go around the table and just wanted to say we're super grateful to have such great experience on this commission right here because you know, that's gonna be really beneficial to all of us to help with that. But yeah, I've been here in Lacey. I was born and raised here. There'll be 43, almost 44 years in December. So unfortunately, you'll know how old I am because I was born and raised here. I'm a graduate of North Thurston High School. The town tried to pull me away a few times. I graduated from PLU, Pacific Lutheran University, and in the meantime, I did play basketball at South Puget Sound Community College before going to PLU. Now it's just amazing to see how this community has grown compared to where it was when I lived here before, when they were selling Lacey Sucks t-shirts, which you guys may not know about, but it was a big deal back when I was in high school, okay? And so far, we've gone to prove them all wrong that we're indeed the far superior city to our neighbors. No.
Largest
okay.
population.
Thank you. I will take a little pride in that, being that I'm from here, but most of the time I just spend, coaching youth sports. I've coached some high school sports, have a couple kids who like to play basketball too. And my job, I guess my day job is I'm a real estate agent. I've been in real estate since 2013. And yeah, I just have done a few things through the city of Lacey. One before that I was on was the pedestrian bicycle committee. So we just went around and observed where the needs were in the arterial parts of the city for pedestrians, bicyclists. And then we had what they would call, I guess, people that come in and help you devise that plan. So we just kind of a similar situation as this, but it wasn't an official commission, maybe kind of like the
work.
it was a work group or
Work
whatever.
group.
Yeah.
it was a Work group.
But no, I'm super happy to have you guys here and I'll let everybody else introduce themselves. And then we also do maybe have El Haj coming in.
Yeah, I'm in the process of promoting, Tiffany's here also. I'm in the process of promoting Tiffany and El Haj to panelists so that they can chime in.
Okay, well, we can.
Would you like me to go over?
Please,
Okay.
yes.
My name is Nancy Dula and I am a fairly new resident to Lacey. My husband and I retired in June of last year. and we moved up a few months before. We have spent our entire working lives working for the Salvation Army. And we were officers, and our last appointment was regional leaders in Portland, Oregon, encompassing Oregon and Idaho. And so when we retired, he's a little older than I am, not much, but I wasn't ready to retire. So I am working a full-time job and doing advocacy for seniors. And then this is my second time filler, and I'm really enjoying the opportunity to be involved in this group.
Hi, I'm Angelina, the vice chair of this committee. I have lived in Lacey for just about 10 years now. Spouse and I moved up here for work, and rented the first year, and then we're like, no, this seems like a good spot. So we've put down roots. We have a 6-year-old who is a great beneficiary of the North Thurston Public School System. And I was when I applied for this position, I was originally selected as an alternate, and then when someone else had to step back, I was able to jump in, which was so exciting. And this is the first this is the first city board or commission that I've served on, but in here, living here and in Los Angeles and other places that I've lived, being volunteering in the community is really important to me. And I have in my professional life previously, I did a lot of work with grant distribution, and now I work for the state. So last year I worked for the Department of Retirement Systems. So I can tell you all about it.
Maybe I'll give my check every time. I wouldn't mind if you had a bit to it.
Tiffany, what we're doing is, we just had an introduction of our newest members. However, I know you met them in our previous meeting, but we're just going around and doing a quick introduction. If you could just do an introduction of yourself, that would be fantastic.
Yes, no problem. Hi, my name's Tiffany Walker. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the Rapid Rehousing Program Manager at Family Support Center at Southtown. I was also recently a resident of the city of Lacey and moved to the city of Yelm because me and my husband just purchased a new property. I am also, this isn't my first advisory board. Prior to this, I was on the City of Olympia's Police Accountability Advisory Board. And then I am also serving on the Thurston County's Affordable Housing Advisory Board. And that's all about me. You're welcome, and nice to meet all of you.
Good night.
And is El-Haj in the meeting now?
There he is.
El-Haj,
Hi.
can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you guys.
Okay, yeah, I'm sure you've gotten the brief introduction of what's going on here, but we're just going around the table and introducing ourselves to our newest commissioners. If you could just give a brief introduction on yourself as well.
Yeah, so my name is El-Haj. I'm a former Lacey Youth Council member. I was chosen to be the representative for this group. I'm graduated now, but I'm gonna be starting college next fall at the University of Washington. Yeah, so I'll be studying economics and finance, hopefully. And yeah.
Where are you going to school, El-Haj?
Oh, the University of Washington.
Okay.
Yeah.
My daughter graduated.
Yeah. Well, before we move on to our next business item, I did just want to say that this is just such a diverse and amazing group of representatives for this. And I think that the city of Lacey is just really fortunate to have you guys represent this commission. And the work that you've already done in the community just far surpasses mine. And I'm super grateful that all of you guys commit this time to our city like this, for sure. So yeah, let's move on to next business item, and that's going to be our 2025 Human Services Grant Program recommendations. And of course, we're gonna roll that back over right here to Michelle Chavez.
Great, so we have, you have in your staff report, a summary of what the scores and kind of how things shook out with the review of the different applications. And so I just will go over quickly. We had 20 applications from 20 agencies that presented on, I believe it was the 5th. And of those agencies, we had a total ask of $841,761 for a total allocation of $300,000. We had 5 applicants emphasize housing, 4 emphasize survival, 2 emphasize security, and then the majority of the applicants had a combination of multiple priority areas. So we were super happy to have everybody here. And again, I want to thank all of you for all of your work scoring and all the effort that you put into looking at all these applications and scoring them. Because I know that was a heavy lift, and so I really appreciate it, and I appreciate you sticking with us through the long meeting where we had all the application. But I think it's really beneficial to have that kind of opportunity to hear from the applicant. I think it makes a difference, and it can add to the sense of when you're looking at your score sheet to see what maybe questions you might have had that you can get answered. So
I will tell you, having done it in person one time and online one time, online was really hard. It was much better to be here the year before.
Well, that's good to know.
Yeah.
Sure.
So I'm going to find the presentation. It doesn't look like it's on the main page. Be clear.
Maybe under your folder, Michelle, for public meetings.
No, Paul moved it to the M. He moved it to the M.
Staff reports.
Your staff presentations, there it is. Maybe that's- yeah. Great, thank you. I'm going to share the screen presentation. Can everybody online see the presentation?
Yep, I can see it.
Great. So I just have a few slides to go through and it kind of recaps what's in the staff report. I'm gonna go through each option that we talked about and then talk about our staff recommendations. There's actually 6 options available to you. 5 were actually, set out in the report, and then 1 is something else, and that means something we may not have thought of, and you may have thought of on your own time. So I'm gonna move forward on that. So again, just to go over for folks who may be watching or reviewing online, we had this program. This is our 2nd year. We had $300,000 again allocated from the city council to allocate to our nonprofit partners in the community to address direct services for people who are low income and special needs. So we have 3 priority areas: housing, survival, and security. And that's not changed from last year. We initially set that out, and we're in the process of doing a needs assessment where we may possibly look at prioritizing maybe one or above the other, but right now that's still in the process. So we've received 20 funding requests from 20 agencies. All of the applications were for service projects. We didn't receive any capital project requests this year. We did receive 1 last year. The total ask was $841,761. The maximum grant amount, which the city council and you guys had put forward your options, and the council decided to do $50,000 for either public service or capital. Sorry, I don't know why that didn't come to me. And then the total available is $300,000. So this is an overview of the summary. Again, it's a summary of all the scores based on agency, and it is averaged through the agencies and then the total score. So you can see from highest rank to lowest rank, 1 through 20. So I'll go through some of the options that we had put forward. Option number 1 was equal funding, and in your packet you had again that summary sheet of all the scores, and then you had a summary sheet of all the budgetary options where we filled in different scenarios for you to review. The first option is equal funding across the board, $15,000, or the total requested, whichever is less. And so in that option, 20 agencies would be funded. Option number 2, which is one of the ones that staff is recommending, that is, that's why they're in red. The options that we're recommending are in red. A 90+ score, and this is similar to what we did last year. Everybody who scored a 90 or higher got a set amount. It was a little bit higher last year. We had fewer applicants, but this year that would be 25,000 across the board if you scored a 90 or higher, or the total requested, whichever's less. With this option, 12 agencies would be funded. And this is a little summary of the scores, and you can see where that cutoff line would be for option number 2. Option number 3 is another one that staff recommended as a percentile, where we would break off percentages funding based on scoring, again with that rubric. So 95 and above get 65% of the request, 90 to 95, 33% of the request, 89 to 90, 16% of the request, and then not funding scores below 88. And that would be 16 agencies would be funded with option number 3. And this is another way of looking at the scoring breakout for option number 3. There's the first sector, the second sector, and the third sector, and then the lower quadrant would not be funded on that option. Option number 4 is full funding, which would be recommending only awarding the grant request to organizations with the highest scores. So that would be less agencies would get funded. That would be 7 with option number 4. Option
Do you
number,
want questions now or do you want questions at the end?
let's just get through the first, I only have one more slide. Then determine a project priority. So you could choose a priority. This is just an example. If you were to choose housing as a priority, and we broke that out with the housing as a priority, there would be 12 agencies funded under that. Those would be a varying amount based on score. Then option number 6 is something else, something that we haven't thought of, that you've thought of, or are you looking at this to see some different options available? So here's option number 2, 90+, 25,000, 12 agencies funded. Option number 3, percentiles, that would be 32, 16, and 8. And the ask is, of what they asked for. So the maximum funded would be what they asked for. So just to give you a look at both options that staff recommended side by side. Okay. Discussion.
I
Any comments?
Yes, I do. So, I ran through all the numbers just, before I came, figuring out who and what. And so my thing with the option 3 is we would not be using the full amount that is set aside for our budget of 300,000 if we go with option 3. Have a little bit of a
Does it leave us a little
like
short?
278. No, we have extra. We'll have extra. So we're not using that full. It's like 278-ish, something like that. Oh. I guess I should have read that before I did my manual math and highlighting.
Yeah, 278,
Something like that.
626.
Yeah. So my question would be, if we did perhaps go that route, what would happen with that excess money? Is the goal to use the full funds? I'd like to see us fund as many people as we can.
Didn't we divide up the leftovers last year and share it with the lower ones?
Last year, we funded almost the whole amount. It was like 299. It was real close.
How many agencies requests were there?
Last year, I believe we had 12 requests from 11 agencies, and there was 11 grants funded. But we did not have it limited to 1 application per agency last year. So 1 agency applied for 2 and they got funded twice.
And it was also a very quick put together process. Like, we got the funding and then within months we were taking it, like I think we funded it in like 3 months or something short like that. So yeah, it was not we were working with what we had. Yeah, but we did have the money, so But that is a good question. What does happen to the money?
Michelle, do you want to take the first stab at this?
I believe that we would retain the funds. I don't think we would lose them. Could use them for future allocations and combine them.
We can't take some sort of motion to move those funds into like maybe the top tier of the rubric, or evenly distribute those back into the higher scores, or
fund some other people.
fund something else, yeah.
Because if you look at doing the percentages on like 65%, 33% and 16%, and you look at the agencies that would fall under those guidelines and say they requested 50,000. And they get, was it at 16%, it was like $8,000. I mean, that doesn't really make an impact. Potentially,
Certainly, I think.
I
probably-
was struggling with like how we came up with 65%, 33% and 16%. I figured you guys already did the math and that's how we came up with those percentages, but.
Yeah, and I think just to reaffirm what Michelle already mentioned, that, if funds do go unused, we could always request that they be carried over to the next year. So in this case, if there was around $21,000 left over, we'd make a request of the city council to carry that over to next budget cycle, which could add, potentially, depending on what the city council decides to provide for a budget, add an additional $21,000. This commission, though, could make a recommendation to, again, spread those dollars differently, and that's kind of what we're going over tonight. And so I think on the breakdown of those percentages, Michelle, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was basically taking kind of 65, having it almost, and then having it again. Is that kind of how the process worked?
Right, trying to get as close to what we funded last year. I think it was like 33 per agency.
Okay.
So rather than give it,
I mean,
all to the top.
I did like option 3 because it did fund more agencies, but the amounts, especially for their requested needs and what they're doing, are pretty minimal.
Alhaj, did you have a comment? Or is that?
I was scratching my head, sorry.
Okay, no, that's the, I didn't know if it was the raised hand or like
Yeah.
what that was up there.
Nancy, did you have a question for me?
I do. We spoke a little bit last year about the differences in presentation for people that had professional writers and those that were just trying to fill out an application. And I recall that we were going to try and address that some way this year. Was there any point where there was any acknowledgement of that? Because, a little fledgling agency can't compete with somebody who pays a professional to write. So is there any way any of that, because I tried to identify the ones that are on the lower end of the spectrum.
Yeah, only Camp Kitties. I don't think they had any help.
Who's that?
Only Camp Kitties. They came in, they asked for the least amount actually, and they didn't seem.
For me personally, it was trying to adhere more to the what the grant was supposed to go towards, the specific services, the needs. And so that's why I was trying to be a little bit more diligent about the scores this time, because I personally like all these applications. I know they're doing great things for the community, but the specific money is going towards those specific things, and that's where I was trying to keep my focus this time, if that makes sense. But you're right about the grant writing process, which I have little to no knowledge in. So when you're
It's hard.
presenting to me, that might make a huge impact because I can't tell the difference really. I mean, I can in some respects, but you guys would look at it and be, okay, yes, this is a professional grant. And this one is just, a couple people work here, they're using their nighttime, their evenings, and this isn't their job, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, to answer Nancy's question is we didn't have a set aside for smaller agencies. That's something we could look at in the future based on, the budget of the agency and their capacity.
Yeah.
But this time we didn't have separate pots set out for different size agencies.
Well, I like that suggestion there because true, larger agencies or have professional writers, whereas smaller ones do not. And I think if we have categories and how we award those, I think that would might satisfy some of that concern.
I think that, yeah, I think that's a really good idea, and certainly, because I think we all know that nonprofits, what is it? It's the like second year into the third year, the third into the fifth, like there's something in those initial years where they're most likely not gonna keep going because things don't. And so, yeah, there may be something to thinking about for future
Right,
cycles about organizations that are either smaller or have less longevity.
yes.
Well, I go back to what Brandon said because I did like everybody and I knew almost everybody that presented. Like I have done some type of volunteer work, donate something with almost every single organization that presented. And I'm like, yes, love, 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 love. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, you're scoring everyone like super high. And then I went back and I'm like, okay, these are the 3 identified areas. And so I mean, I went back, I redid mine like 4 times.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like
that's
literally
what I would-
4 times
Mhm.
because I'm like, it's
Mhm.
not about what I like, it's about what the city
Right,
wants and
so-
what the commission wants.
Does sound like people were being super observant of scoring the rubrics. And adhering to what we're trying to do with the commission. So I mean. I think that the recommended motions, 2 or 3, still do seem like the more viable options.
Agreed.
And I would think that it would be nice to figure out something to do with that extra money. But if it's just easier or makes more sense to move that to next year, I'm certainly okay
That's-
discussing that too.
That's if we go with option 3. If we go with option 2, it'll
It'll
take
yeah.
the whole thing,
And
yeah.
I don't know how, Michelle, when should we talk about?
Yeah, we can talk about it too, and I just received a note that if we had that additional 21,000,
Yeah.
we could take that and reallocate it to the top scored agencies, which would be about another 7,000 per agency. So we
If we
could
go with
allocate the
option
whole
3.
Yeah, which,
So-
yeah,
We need to decide, is it option 2 or option 3? Because it's a moot point if we go with option
Does-
2, right? Because we'll use the
Option 2
whole.
is already
Yeah.
spent down.
Yeah.
Option 3, we could
We
move
have
to
that
reallocate the
reallocate.
extra money to the top scores.
can we have some discussion
Yeah.
on 2 and 3? Because I do think that those make the most sense personally, but does anybody have any objection to just talking about other options than 2 and 3? Tiffany?
No, I'm sorry, I rose my hand before you said, does anybody have any objections about talking about other options?
sorry.
But I just wanted to say, for me, I personally like option 2, working in the nonprofit sector. I know almost every one of these organizations. My soul, when I was scoring these, my main focus was what we as a commission are looking to disperse this money, what organizations were in the line with what we're trying to disperse this money for.
Right.
And for me, pretty much all these organizations that are in option 2 that were awarded funding, they would need a higher amount to be able to meet the goal in the scope of what they were trying to utilize those funds for. So that's why, for me, option 2 looks the best, but I do like option 3 as well, and being able to, disperse the rest of the money to the ones that scored higher. And so that might alleviate some of that concern, because I know, like, for instance, in North Thurston School District, we go there twice a week as an organization, and I see the need for the Lacey residents needing, that extra financial support for like foods, clothing, rent assistance, utility assistance, and their funding goes like that. And they only have so much funding for such a big district. So that's why I pick option 2, if you guys would like my opinion on what I think would be the best option.
Well,
I also know that CLO was denied some of their grants, and they are a big help with our Latino community.
well, I really enjoyed their presentation.
Yeah, if I could, oh, please.
No, please.
I tend to agree with Tiffany about option and the concerns that Yvette raised about those groups that are maybe in the 16% funding in option 3, that, you know, maybe it's not enough, but as far as thinking about the groups that scored the highest, one of the things that I noticed when I was reading through the applications, and I really appreciated the groups that, when we asked that question about nonprofit collaboration and sort of how you all are working together, and there were the folks who just were like listing bullet points, and in my recollection, Cielo showed up on like every single one of those applications. And so clearly they're doing a lot of underpinning of the nonprofit work, and so,
Collaboration part, which was.
you know, and so, you know, if it was if we went with option 3, I would be more inclined to take the remaining funds and bump up those early
Take
groups.
into
or-
consideration that some of those with option 3, those organizations that scored the highest are actually getting more than the allotment of 25,000 that they would if we spread it equally.
I would have liked to see it go down to the lower.
To the 20,
Well, I'd like to see it go down to the folks that are at the 16% and just
See.
disperse it because like, you know, our.
well, that's just it,
you
they're
know,
like
comes
so
in at
close.
50 and they want at 50, and if that formula, they'd only get 8 out of 50 is not.
So this was what we struggled with last year was there, we came with a staunch cutoff, I believe, of 90, right, Michelle? So anybody
I
who's,
think the council cut it at 90.
So
We had-
if it's different.
Well,
if
we
it's-
had
There was
one
a little bit
agency
of leftover
leftover.
dollars from last year, and the recommendation from this group was to break the, I think it was like $8,000 or so up a couple
Yeah.
amongst a couple of entities, but when the council took it, they decided just to keep that 90 threshold.
yeah,
So.
that's right, so that's what I was recalling, yeah.
Okay.
Correct, but again, last year, the main recommendation from this group was to, you know, fund most of the dollars
Yeah.
to the 90+.
So I wonder if they wouldn't take that same approach this year again, that's, you know, not for us to decide, so for sure, the city of Lacey likes option 2. We know that more than likely they would probably just approve that without any changes, I think, being that those were all 90 above scores. It just really, those other organizations were just so close
So close.
and just, you know,
I mean,
80 in the 89,
89.875.
yeah, and so.
For the
and-
love, yeah.
And some of those, I know for sure at least one of those didn't score as well last year, and they may have been working harder at, you know, presenting this. I would wondered if they would even come back. So it was good to see them.
Are we allowed to say, or is that
It-
private? Cause this is a recorded conversation.
So if the question is who came back last year?
That didn't, that from last year that scored much lower.
Gotcha, and
And
this is all public records and information.
So, yeah,
but you have the
it was
rankings from
ours.
last year of who went before the
Okay.
summer.
it was our ARC who scored significantly lower last year. And I was, you know, wondering if I would see them back here this year.
Yeah.
And they scored significantly better with our commission this year. So it's like, I just don't wanna, you
So
know,
do we service more organizations with lesser dollar amounts? Or do we
It-
service the other ones with dollar amounts so that they can actually make an impact on what they're trying to do?
right,
Well, you know, some of the larger ones together, some of those other ones, you know, they have other funding sources that, you know.
Yeah, but other funding sources that have traditionally been available are no longer available and very, very involved with the nonprofit world and they're seeing funding cut all over, they're seeing donations down all over. So maybe what we looked at last year for, you know, the larger organizations, or even the medium size or the small, that it's not there this year. We are at risk of seeing a lot of nonprofits close down this year.
They already have, they've started, right? They just can't make it.
Yeah, so I think, I want to give more to more groups, but in the reality of, if someone's asking for 50 and on that chart, you get like, I don't know, 16 and a half or something like that, that's not gonna make an impact on their program.
So does the funding the 12 use all of the funds?
Yes,
Mhm.
yes, this evenly distributes that 25,000.
25,000 and that's 12.
So everyone was asked, I think, if you didn't receive the grant, what would your plan be for this? And I think pretty much only 2 or 3 people said they would have to reconsider the program.
I think you're right.
Hmm.
Um,
So it sounds like if we go with option 3, it funds more,
mhm.
there's 21,000 left over. We don't know what the city council would do with the rest of the money. Haven't been in the military serving logistics. You use the funds that you have before you because you don't know if you're gonna have it or lose it altogether. And we already have that
Yeah, and I mean, ultimately, we're just
precedence on
making,
that as of last year, right? There was 8,000 and the city decided to use something else for it.
Well, it was, I believe, just kind of the redistributed to
Okay.
the existing grant fundies to
Okay.
where it became.
so they didn't use it for something else, they
If
applied
I-
it.
Correct,
if I-
Michelle?
Oh, they kept it in this
Mhm.
program.
We pledged it into the.
And I
Covered
think,
in
and
this
that's,
program.
and that's
Okay.
kind of what Michelle was recommending too, that is an option that this board could consider of taking that $21,374. And if you, for example, opted to split it amongst the top,
It would be $1,335 a piece.
it could be if you split it across all of them, or if you gave it to the highest scoring, those top 3 that didn't reach 100, as an example, that could fund almost 80% of their request at $39,624. If that was, that could be one of many approaches that.
But ultimately, city council is gonna make the decision, we're just gonna make a recommendation.
So if I could just point out in my opinion, the benefits of 2 and 3. I think 3 does have one of the major benefits is some of those programs that scored the highest and that probably need the most funding are actually getting more than they would if they were if we chose option 2. And then also it does end up funding some of those people that were super close. But again, I think that this, based on our previous experience, it's likely that number 2 would be the council's probable recommendation. So, I know we're an independent commission for this group, but again, we're just recommending to them, so. Angela?
I guess I'm wondering, because I hear and I similarly appreciate what folks are saying about, funding as many groups as we possibly can and to an impactful amount. So part of me would wonder if we recommended option 3 with what's the word I'm looking for? Like not contingency, but like, so let's say, for example, that the city council says, no, we're gonna stick with our like hard cap on 90. Then that would take that 21,000 that we have kind of rattling around right now and add another almost double that. If they said we're sticking with 90, then we're losing everyone below 89.
Yeah, so it'd be
Then-
$25,000 each.
Yeah. Oh, no. What I'm saying is, so let's say if they say we want a hard cap at 90, okay? So then everybody below South Puget Sound drops off. But that money is still floating out in the world. so
No,
we're gonna
actually,
get- No?
no, that's fully funded.
It's fully, it would give everybody 25,000, so 12
Two.
organizations
Right.
would get 25 grand.
Sorry, no, I'm words, I'm not communicating. What I'm saying is, if we recommend option 3, and city council comes back and says, we wanna go with that 90 and above, then we almost double the unassigned monies. Do you see what I'm saying? Because if they say we want 90, then everything for the love, et cetera, down doesn't get funded. So do we have the ability to say if they, for example, are stuck on that 90 number, that we would then take these additional unassigned funds and then they would be redistributed across the groups?
I don't think we wouldn't have any unassigned funds. Right?
feel
Am I
like-
misunderstanding you? I'm
Maybe,
sorry.
maybe Commissioner, if I could, I
Yeah,
think maybe what
please.
you're saying is if you were to recommend option 3,
Mhm.
and so with the funding amount, so for example, right now with the CLO receiving the top amount of, what is it? 32,000,
Mhm.
and then if the council were to decide to use a rubric,
Mhm.
redistributing the dollars that were the score above 90 to those who had already gotten funds, so those in the higher percentage would get more dollars and then break it down even less. So you could see, for example, like CLO getting a hypothetical closer to the 50,000 comparative to somebody who's maybe lower down, like a somebody who's in the let's just use, rebuilding together may get less dollars, but may get more than what's currently there in the percentile 3. Is that correct?
Yes.
I do, I thank you for,
Thank
for
you.
clarifying.
I was tracking and then I wasn't, now I'm back.
Yeah,
Same here.
yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you for giving me the words.
Yeah, because we would be recommending that they would be, for instance, the North Thurston Education Foundation, we'd be recommending that they're getting 32,000, but then that may differ once they decide, nah, we only like the 90, so then I would say they'd probably just end up going to the 25,000, quite honestly. That's probably what would happen.
Yeah, I hear that. I think option 3 is a better negotiating starting point. I mean, I realize that we're not negotiating with the city council, but I think that,
Like, wait a
wouldn't that be lovely? But, I
negotiating.
mean, like the 25,000's down the board, like that's a rubber stamp, right? That's really easy for them to say yes to. I think option 3 gives more room for the possibility for them to do something different. And even if they end up doing the exact same thing, so be it, but
Yeah, maybe they have to
at least
debate
talk about it a little bit more.
about it, or Elhaj?
Mhm.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I think it's like one of those quality over quantity things. And if we went with like option 2, I think it would like ensure that the organizations or the agencies that are being funded would like they would like be able to make like an actual impact, you know? And like with option 2, like over half of the agencies are being funded. So I think like it's kind of like the best of both worlds in my opinion. Like it would ensure or like ensure more that an impact would be made, and also like over half of the agencies would be like given money instead of like, like a small amount that, probably wouldn't really do as much. So
I think that in some cases, though, it actually makes more of an impact with some agencies. So, I mean, for instance, the North Thurston Education Foundation could benefit $7,500 from that, which we scored the highest in over 3, and then CLO as well.
So so if we went with option 2, and it's 25,000 to everyone that's 90 and above, everybody except for one Boys and Girls Club would get 50% of the requested amount. And if we remember from reading through the packets and their presentations on what they're gonna do with that money, I mean, 50% is still a tough thing to do what they need to do.
Tiffany, can I call on you one more time to talk about?
I'm looking at numbers, sorry. So
Just-
like I see
yeah.
what you guys are saying about option 3, but
Yeah.
like I'm looking at like, for instance, senior services for South Sound. Yes, North Thurston, and yes, I would love to see North Thurston get more money than what they asked, than what option 2 would give them. But like if you go to option 3, senior services at South Sound, we've only allocated for them in option 3, $16,000. How much home repair can you do with $16,000?
exactly.
How much of an impact can that make? And I know they are one of the most under what's the word I'm looking for? They get their
Sure.
funding, they get very little funding. So they have little funding to work with, and also like you know, I know that the Habitat for Humanity and Homes First, they get good funding, but it's just like I don't see it being, I just don't see it being equally across the board. You know what I mean? If you were to fund it that way, because then some would get, like the ones that are in the 90%, some of them still score, they're still getting less than some that scored 90% and higher. You know what I mean? Fair and
what-
equitable. I guess fair and equitable is what I'm trying to say, the
Sure.
word I'm looking.
Which option do you think then? I mean, which are you leaning towards?
I'm still leaning towards option 2, but I do see what you guys are saying about option 3, but then I look at some of the ones that would get less, that would need that more money, like I said. You know what I mean? I don't know if I'm making sense. I can't get out what I'm thinking.
No, I understand what you're saying. I appreciate your input very much.
If I could make a
We're all thinking out loud right now. So
Yeah, exactly.
it's fine.
So it sounds to me like we all are generally of the mind that those groups that are being funded in sort of the 16% window, we don't necessarily think that that's gonna make a huge impact to them. I am kind of curious, and I don't have enough screens in front of me, but if we were to say, take for option 3, just say everything below a 90 is just off the table. Put all that money back into the pot and then redistributed it to the groups that are being funded at 33%. What would that do? I need a calculator.
So
My phone.
I just did some quick math and I think what I heard,
Mhm.
Commissioner, please,
Yep.
correct me if I'm wrong, of funding everybody at 33% who scored above 90
Yes.
would be less dollars than what option 2 would provide.
Oh.
However, I think maybe if,
Mhm.
just as an example, if you wanted to redistribute the dollars from everybody who scored below a 90
Yes.
in a percentile basis, based on the percentiles that were recommended by staff, you would increase the top scorers to around 80%, which would mean that they would get $40,000. And then in that next tier that was designated of the 95 to 90, you would get just under 20,000 at $19,375, which would be about 39% of the request for those agencies. And then everything below that 90 threshold would have $0, I believe is kind of what the math that you were looking for.
Yeah, because what I'm hearing in our conversation is the tension between what's the threshold of impact. And also to El Hajj's point, the quality over quantity question.
And Tiffany as well. I think
And
it's-
Tiffany, yeah.
Hey, so I have a suggestion. If
Sure.
you guys did give us another option. How about the first 12? We fund those at, what did I say here? We fund those at 22,000, okay? And then the 4 that are left, that would leave us 36,000 on the table. And that would be the 4 and under, that also gives the our ARC some money, okay? And it would give them equally $9,000. I'm not saying it's gonna make a big, huge impact, but if we're looking to be fair and equitable across the board, and you guys are looking more towards option 3 and would like to see more organizations funded, let's change up the amounts a little bit.
That's a good suggestion.
How much did you say per agency?
So for the first 12, let's go 22,000 instead of 25.
Free, yeah.
That 12 times 22,000 is 264,000. And then you take 300,000 minus 264, that leaves us $36,000 on the table. That leaves us 4 more agencies to make it the 16 agencies that are in option 3. And we spread that equally out between those 4 at 9,000. That way, those who scored those higher 80 percentages still get some funding, and some of them, and it's spread out equally. Well, actually, or we could give money to another organization, like, we can go down another one. I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud, like maybe thinking a different way, since we can give them another option that's not on the board.
Commissioner Walker, do you mind walking me through the numbers one more time? I'm just trying to do it in real time and I want to make sure I'm getting it right. So could you say the breakdown one more time?
22,000 for the first 12.
And then it'll be remaining 36,000.
That we would distribute to the remaining 4.
Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4 organizations. So,
32,000.
for example, For the Love would have gotten 8,000, so then they get what,
9.
9? So the people that it would really impact is the garden-based bounty. Grub would be a impact, Strophe. But it really wouldn't impact our ARC because they need 50. Strophe's 40.
Well.
At least we're still trying to be fair and equitable. We're acknowledging that they came back, they got, we might not be making as big as an impact that we would hope to. Like, I would like to see with like option 2, if we had more money to be able to spread it out with more money, but at least it's coming out equally. Then we have something a little bit more solid to give to to present to the board.
As someone who has less experience in this, can you explain to me, if I'm applying for a grant as a nonprofit and a grant writer, what incentive do I have to not just apply for the whole amount that people are offering? So if the city of Lansing is offering $50,000, why would I not ask for that? And you know what I mean?
But you have to provide documentation of the use and like what the expectations are for those funds. So, I mean, most nonprofits they're gonna apply for 50,000, knowing they're not gonna get 50,000.
Right.
But they're gonna, you always, in the nonprofit world, you always ask for more as much as you
And that's what I'm
can,
wondering.
right?
Exactly.
If,
They always ask for as much as they can, knowing, 9 times out of 10, they're not gonna get that.
yeah, so I guess to that would be, and Tiffany's point is, yeah, our ARC asked for 50,000, but would 9,000 be better than 0?
Right. Well, and part of the things too is there's such things as restricted funds and unrestricted funds that come from grants and come from the. And so based on what they applied for and their usage of it, it's going to determine whether it's restricted or unrestricted funds. And so I do not remember I have kept all the presentations, but that would go back to, we'd have to go back and read through those grants again and understand, are these restricted or unrestricted funds? Because if they're unrestricted funds, that's great. They can use them for other things, but they're restricted and they need a certain dollar amount to accomplish what they're doing. They can't use those funds because they're not going to meet the criteria.
T, did you have some comments? I know you're pondering and thinking. I'll
Pondering
come
over
back
there.
to you.
Mhm.
I guess my point is, we're dealing with, in my opinion, like a very small amount of money in
I
general.
know, we need more next year.
300,000 just doesn't go far anywhere anymore.
Yeah.
And so it's like $25,000, this doesn't go very far for anybody anymore. Not regular families, not organizations. So, I mean, potentially, we might be just like worried more about just being equitable at this point. Because $2,000 or $3,000 doesn't really even might pay like half, like a couple weeks salary. Do you know what I mean? It's,
But it is a statement that we acknowledge their application and it has merit. It just
Right.
didn't measure up to some of the other ones. And I don't know how valuable that is in this process. Because part of our original challenge was there's money available, but like CDBG money comes with a lot more accountability, responsibility, professionalism. And the idea was this was supposed to be available to some of the agencies that didn't have the capability of doing all of that stuff. And so I like Tiffany's idea, but I'd like to throw a different one, a different spin on it. I think just some small gesture to the ones that made the lower part is a really important statement to make. And I totally get that the more we give the people that are doing the larger programs, the better they can do. But if that means that there's a potential that we're gonna help somebody get along to the way of closing quicker, that defeats our purpose on a larger scale. So I just think there might be some merit to looking at that middle tier, doing a little bit less to give at least some kind of statement money to the ones in the lower level. After all, everybody's had kids in school, right? Wouldn't you be delighted with an 80% with your kids when they came home with a report card? Yeah.
What about, I have a.
Okay, Michelle.
I have an idea.
Okay.
What about, okay, the top 12, I'm talking about option 3. Because the top ones in option 3 get more money than option 2. They get 32.5 instead of 25.
Mm-hmm.
So that gets to your piece about making a higher impact for those that are larger. And then the second group, which is that 33 percentile, what if you change the percentile at the bottom to like 20% instead of 16? Instead of funding 4 agencies, just fund 2. Or we could change the percentages so that the lower scoring ones would get more money, but then that bottom line would cut off
Because
higher.
they're so close.
You're so close. And then we would make sure we put all of the extra 21,000 into either the top tier or the bottom tier.
I was wondering if we could do it to the bottom tier. Because the amounts are so minimal, that would make a little bit more of an impact.
I think what the council did last year is they took what was left and they spread it evenly amongst everybody.
Amongst everybody,
Yeah.
Well,
like even.
Most
the-
everybody scored above a 90 because.
Yes, everybody's.
Okay.
And so are they the one that set that magical number?
No, this commission was the one that reviewed it and made the recommendation for 90 based on the review, and so.
We did,
Okay.
right.
You, again, as the commission, as the advisory board, you have the opportunity to make another recommendation, and it could or could not include, a recommendation with the 90 score.
Now, what was Tiffany's recommendation again?
The top 12 at 22,000,
Uh-huh.
which brings to 264, and then that leaves 36,000 left. If you divided that by 4, they would each get 9,000. So like Yvette said, that would impact Grub. They would get 9 instead of 3. But the other ones, the impact isn't as significant.
Well,
minimal.
but on the flip side,
For under the
The
12.
bottom 4 would get 9 instead of like
yes,
81 or
And that's 16.
32. Yeah.
it certainly is the most equitable one. On the flip side, it does take the highest scoring agencies and knock them from 32,000 down to 22,000. So they're losing over $10,000 in funding. Then I think that's the battle that we're all struggling with right now.
The struggle is to fund the higher amount for fewer agencies or
Be equitable.
fund less with spread the money farther with more agencies.
Well, and like someone said, this is not like the CBDGs, like where it's super, super restricted. So these are probably gonna be unrestricted funds is what I would assume. So they can do with them with what they will.
I
Right?
think restricted only in what their application is.
Well, it's restricted to the 3 categories.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For the agencies that returned this year, and I have a note, I was looking on my phone because I wanted to see one of the notes I took. Was there any accountability for the funds and the commitment that they made last year for the funds?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, most of them had put that in their packet, their submission.
There was some follow-up on
So,
Where,
and I think just maybe to add some context too, we enter into agreements with all of these organizations, and as part of that, it stipulates that they have to use the dollars for what they said they had in their application as their scope of service. And so, you know, if you were to put in housing and a very specific project, you can't use it for food in the future. It's,
So it's restricted.
but based on their
That way.
application in
Yeah.
the scope of service. So just to clarify on
Correct.
that.
Yeah.
Correct.
would,
Yeah,
Where-
she's gone.
where would, between all these options, maybe as a group, someone could help me understand, like, where are we making the most impact on our community?
I
Like,
think
where-
every person would have a different opinion.
Well, I wouldn't mind hearing it. Because even those smaller agencies depend on every little dollar, you know, I mean,
Mhm.
most of them would take a $10 donation probably, right?
Mhm.
A $20 donation, so, you know, it feels like any dollar makes an impact personally, but
When I was scoring my 4 times, I ended up going back to how many Lacey residents is this gonna serve?
that was
That
it. Right.
I
Sure.
kept going, cause I was like, I love kitty cats and I love what Lily Camp is doing, you know what I mean? And then, but I went back to how many residents does it fit into our 3 initiatives that we have? And, you know, and it was really hard because like I said, I know most of these nonprofits and have done stuff with them over the years. With federal funding cuts and everything that's going on with the current administration. Even those, like I said earlier, those larger nonprofits and stuff, they are all going to be affected. I love the idea from the standpoint of like give more and say, you know, give more to other organizations to, as a token of saying thank you, but I have to look at realistically, what's the impact of that gonna do? And how's that gonna take our top scoring folks and what are they gonna be able to do with less than 50% of what they've requested? And that's my struggle right now, because I wanna give everybody money, you know? I would love to give everybody money, but we need to give them money so that they can do what they say they're gonna do, right?
Did you have a comment?
Yeah, I think the area that's like being impacted most is like housing, because all of the applications that have like over 90, almost all of them have like something to do with like housing and like the homeless community.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think that's probably like that will probably like impact like a lot of like people in Lacey.
I have to say, I'm almost inclined to take the 25,000 and split it amongst the 12. And somehow ask council for more next year. Which I know, but I wanna make sure that who we're giving, they can actually do something, you know? That they're gonna get enough funds to do what they said they were gonna do. When we're coming in at least 50% below their request on all of them.
Is Tiffany,
I say we put a motion on the board.
Yeah.
Ready, Tiffany, I'm
Um,
so conflicted, I'm going back and forth like a yo-yo.
Question.
Oh, this is so stressful.
It is, and it's hard because whichever way we decide to go, it's still not going to be enough. You
I
know, like you said, that there's so many organizations that have lost funding from the things that are going on right now. And we are actually one of them as well. We've had to lay off our operations director, and it's sad, you know, and you just pray and hope that other people won't get laid off, you know, and that, you know, I know that rental assistance funds has been cut. So we're gonna see a larger impact of people struggling and on those eviction dockets now because they're having a hard time making ends meet. So I see multiple different facets. I don't know which way to go.
don't know either.
I actually prefer number 1. And I can't believe I'm saying that.
Really? The 25?
No.
No.
No, oh,
Number
wait.
one is divided equally except for those that ask for less and then give them what they ask
Number
for.
Oh, that one. Hmm.
Applicants.
So there was.
Total
Where
revenue.
everybody
But I
get
hear already
15
that
and more.
that.
No, I don't agree with that.
Well, I'm just speaking my.
Oh, no, she was just showing me. I didn't bring my thing.
I think if, yeah. That would be my first choice. And reallocating the extra funds to the ones that had higher amounts that were scored highest. That would be my recommendation.
Can we must make a decision. And we've had, I think, El Haj has another comment.
Yeah, I wanted to ask, is it guaranteed that the extra money that's not allocated, would it go like, is it guaranteed to go back to the agencies?
No, the money that's not allocated could go several different ways. Could be reallocated, it could be rolled over. I believe those were the only two options, right? Yeah,
Correct, yep.
so it will be used at some point, assuming that there's that there is a next year, right? I
Yeah,
mean, that's
that's the reality.
that's the reality of it right now.
So
Very true.
I guess commissioners, there is, you asked, do you need to make a decision tonight? And I just want to be fully transparent. Obviously, we came here looking for a recommendation. We do have another meeting scheduled for July 10th as well. So we could also take some of the feedback that we've heard and
Can
kind
bring
of
up some other
bring
options.
some
If-
other options on the 10th.
If the city doesn't mind, I would make a recommendation that we at least look at option 2 and 3 and then potentially a couple different options that do involve a more equitable divvy of the amount. Potentially the one that Tiffany had, and then but maybe table some of those other options. So Nancy, I know you like one.
That's okay. I
Um,
mean,
Yeah.
I'm just expressing my opinion. So
Your opinion is highly valued.
I could get on board with something else, but and where's my Bernie Sanders hat,
Yeah.
right? Honestly, that would not be my normal inclination.
Yeah.
But when we listen to the presentations, I'm hard pressed to not acknowledge everybody, even though it may be at a much smaller
Okay,
amount.
yeah,
I think there's value in it. But that doesn't cover the dollars, but I think the value is there, especially when we want to talk about people, trying again.
Yeah.
for me personally, I would just like to see that on the diagram in writing rather than just like thinking about it.
I'm gonna go back and reread everybody's stuff. I don't know. I thought I had a good handle on it, and now I don't feel like I have a good handle on it, quite honestly.
It is a pretty quick process and and no doubt, a lot of applications this time around for us to, which we're thankful that, everybody did all that work, but if we could get those 3 options and kind of boil it down to that, then we can have some discussion about that and then, make a recommendation to the city at that time.
When does it have to be into the city?
So we have it scheduled to go before the council here for an initial review, and I'm pulling it up and buying myself some time as I'm saying that.
It's towards the end of, it's towards.
It is
July
definitely
22nd.
22nd, and so if we were to reconvene on the 10th and you all could deliberate again and take a look at, Michelle can recreate some of the feedback we've heard and some of the options that you all have provided, and we could send out some updated for discussion on the 10th. We would certainly meet our deadlines for bringing it in front of the council.
July 10th.
And I just want to say, this conversation has been really helpful for us too, as staff, to kind of understand and kind of frame what we
Thank you.
could bring back if you all so choose to go that route. And I just want to acknowledge that you all are having to make, tough decisions on the recommendations. The math problem is the math problem, right? You've got over $840,000 in asks and you've got $300,000 of funding to recommend to the city council. And so these
And
are
a whole lot of community need.
and a whole lot of community need. I think that's a really good point. And so I know these are tough conversations, but these are good conversations to have, and you provided us with some good direction if you do want to think about returning to this on the 10th.
Plus, I think there's something to be said about the fact that we had really strong applicants.
Mhm.
I mean, this is such a like, the fact that 81 is the lowest score we have is, you know, speaks to all of these groups. So I'm gonna make a motion.
Oh, 1 second, I just have, Tiffany did have her hand raised.
I was just gonna say, if, I think it is a good idea to go back, if we're not gonna vote on which budget to approve, or which organizations to fund, excuse me. I think it is a good idea to go back and read their presentations and look at like what they're gonna be utilizing those funds for. How much of those funds are gonna really go back into the community and not go towards admin dollars and like operating costs and stuff like that. That's all I was gonna say.
I would feel more comfortable if I had the opportunity now, realizing everything we've all talked about, to go back and read through it one more time.
And with that said,
With that said, so I am gonna make a motion to table for further review with the intention of coming back on July 10th, having re-reviewed the documents, gone into our separate corners, done all the thinking that we needed to do, and come to a conclusion in our July 10th meeting, in anticipation of the council meeting later in July.
That's it.
Okay, all in favor of Angelina's recommendation or motion, say aye.
I could share, I think our parliamentarian has just a question or a comment.
Question, ask a question. We did,
Lester,
Lester
Second.
seconded that. Thank you.
Lester Dixon, I'm sorry.
sorry, I apologize, Chair.
Okay, sorry, so all those in favor, please say aye.
I
All those opposed? Okay, that motion passes. And if we didn't have any other comments or questions at this time from anybody? Okay, so with that, we will adjourn our Human Services Commission special meeting for Thursday, June 26th, and the time is 6:47.
Much shorter than the first one. I had.
But we kept going.
We're saying like 5:50 or something when you came in originally.